welcome back to Let's Play Final Fantasy VII. We have just killed Genova, and all that's left is to take out Sephiroth. Might be easier said than done, though. Well, this isn't good. Okay, what it just did is gave us the ability to form our party. So let's do this. Oh, jeez. What happened to them all? Okay, it's boss battle time. We are fighting Bizarro Sephiroth. And, well, this is sort of a weird thing. I'm not entirely sure what just happened here. Because ordinarily, your other characters have the ability to join in on the fight. So, this is kind of a weird thing for me. I've never experienced this before. I knew it was possible for a small group of the characters to not participate in the fight. Like two of the characters in the event that you have, like Vincent and Yuffie, because they aren't necessary members. But I wasn't aware that you could blast away all the members and just have 3 of them fight. That's a new one on me. Okay, we are fighting Bizarro Sephiroth here, and this was a battle that had actually completely disappointed me. Because when I had gotten to this point, I had been thinking, ever since I saw Meteor start to fall, I've been wondering, like, what's it going to be like when we finally go and fight Sephiroth down in the Northern Cave where I knew he was. And I had this whole idea that it was going to be this awesome battle where you're going to have this awesome-looking monster and this awesome, like, battle music playing. Unfortunately, we get to here, and I found this to be kind of disappointing. I felt so disappointed when I got to here. Oh man, it was... But anyway, here we are. We're fighting Bizarro Sephiroth, and he's not going to be the most difficult enemy. So we just pick off his arms, and then we can attack his core. And in the event that you have some of the more powerful summons like Knights of the Round, you can go and just beat the piss out of him real easy. But in the event that you had more characters, not just the 3 here, you would have the option of every time you've taken out one of the limbs, you have the option of going and switching over to a different party and continuing the fight from a different angle. So there's that. Fortunately, I do not have that here, but it's not going to be a big issue. At least I don't think so. I believe he can bring some of his limbs back to life. So we want to take him down as quick as possible, you know? Now, here is the result of Sephiroth swimming around in the live stream. He has been sort of revived by the knowledge of the planet, and he's sort of turned into this weird mixture of not purely what he was, and he's not just a monster of Genova anymore. He's turned into something more here, whatever the hell that might be. I mean, look at this weird thing. It's got flippers on its hands, and fins and shit, and it's got a weird thing as a crotch. I mean, that's just odd. I don't want to use too much of Red 13's magic MP because if I do, it'll reduce his attack power. Limit break. Wow, only 3 levels. That's sad. Is he gonna die anytime soon? Magic breath, that's powerful. The core is dead. That's something weird. Take him down. We got him. We got him. Wow, an actual death animation. Well, Sephiroth's dead. That's the end of the game, folks. Of course, it's not over. And now we have our new Sephiroth form to fight. And this one's going to be quite a bit more difficult than the last one. This is safer Sephiroth. The more, regardless of how many characters you had involved in your previous battle, this one was going to only involve the 3 that you had. Only involve the 3 that you had in your main party with Cloud. And it's a shame that it's slowing down a lot. Shadow Flare. That's an enemy skill, by the way. Let's go use that back on him. Now, I'd have to say, when I first got to this point in the battle, following my incredible disappointment of the previous battle against Sephiroth, I was immediately taken back by this. Primarily because the music is so bizarre. This is completely unlike anything I'd ever heard in a video game before. Almost orchestral and involving a lot of... It's got dialogue, or not dialogue, lyrics in it. And they're speaking Greek there. He's out of reach. We can't get him with normal attacks. They're speaking Greek there. And it has something to do with a lot of the... Well, not speaking Greek. They're speaking Latin. My bad. I feel dumb now. They're speaking Latin, and a lot of Latin is... Latin has a close association with sort of religion, the way that the Roman Empire was influential with the rise of Christianity. But this is a perfect piece of symbolism here, because what is supposed to be shown here was Sephiroth is not just a... Oh, supernova. Sephiroth was no longer just the man that he was before. His time in the life stream has changed him, and he not just made him more crazy. He has been sucking up the power of the planet, sucking up the life force of the planet, and as this goes on, he is becoming closer and closer to becoming a god. So here he is, one step away. The only thing that needs to happen is Meteor needs to fall and damage the planet, and he needs to suck up that last bit of energy in order to become what he plans to. He's already more powerful than Jenova ever was, but he's still trying to go and try and do what Jenova's plan was. Remember, Jenova was part of this cycle that had been going on for who knows how many years. How impossible to know how long it's been happening, but Jenova would arrive at a planet and then basically destroy it, rot it from the inside with all of its evilness. And it would infect the planet and all that, and then that planet would be ridden to the next one, and it would crash land, and Jenova would come out and do the same thing. Well, Jenova is dead now, but basically that plan of Jenova doing that stuff ended when Sephiroth fell into the life stream. Having Jenova cells made him survive that, and half being of this planet, they call it Earth here, half being of the planet of the game and half being of wherever Jenova came from, Sephiroth actually returned to the life stream, but the Jenova cells kept everything intact. So he was able to basically survive death as his own entity, and fed upon that energy and made him even more powerful. And that's how he was able to overwhelm the power of Jenova and become an even more powerful entity in his own right. She down? Yeah, she's down. Let's get regen back on. Oh, no, Red 13's down. Wow, he's proven to be more difficult than I expected him to. Okay, now he's closer to the ground, we can do regular physical attacks. Cloud, having the 2x cut materia, was able to attack anyway. Oh, he's doing D-spell. That would have removed Cloud's haste status. Sephiroth will probably just do the same thing again, but we'll try anyway. Damn it. Tifa's running out of power. Ooh, the damage. You didn't think that would kill him, did you? Ha. I'd say in later games in the series, they actually tried to sort of recreate the sort of influence that this song had on the game. This game was sort of... You could say that it sort of... it's difficult to overstate how influential this game was, and a lot of it had to do with sort of the time it came in to be and what people were expecting out of games at the time. But I'd have to say a lot of it had to do with the way Sephiroth is treated in this game. And how we finally get to the end of this game and we see this enemy and this music, I'm not really describing this too well. I'll get to it during the end credits. But there we go. Defeated Sephiroth, and world is saved. The only reason why the planet wasn't able to destroy Meteor a while back was because the ability to do so, a spell called Holy, which had to be summoned from the planet, wasn't able to happen because Sephiroth was present. As long as Sephiroth was in position, the planet couldn't summon Holy. Okay, what's happening right now is Sephiroth isn't dead. Sephiroth can't really die so easily. Because Cloud does have Genova cells in his body, Sephiroth is attempting to take control of Cloud's mind, and therefore his body, and continue what he was doing. One more battle. Showdown between Sephiroth and Cloud. Let's take this son of a bitch out. That's Marlene there. It's too late. Holy can't stop Meteor, and it's just destroying everything. And there we have it. That was the game Final Fantasy VII. Now, obviously, this was never the first game in the series, but I'd say it's almost unarguably the most influential, because it's difficult to sort of understate the importance that this game had, or the influence that this game had on not only the Japanese RPG genre in and of itself, but video games in general. This came out, I guess it was 97, and it had this tremendous effect of popularizing the genre to the Western audience, which years before had really not been that receptive to it. And I'd say the reason why it did that was, aside from its big production values and all that, the and pretty big ad campaign forcing that people would recognize it, I'd say it was sort of a perfect storm of good things that happened to it. It came at a time when it was relatively new generation of consoles, and people were looking for the new type of game that they hadn't really tried before. But I'd say the game itself had a lot of things going for it. For one thing, the way it started when they were doing the reactor bombing mission immediately jumped into the action, and they managed to maintain it through what at the time were very, very deep characters and an engaging storyline. I'd say that really hasn't aged that well, but I mean, you can still see some remnants of what it was, what people thought of it at the time, and what kind of effect it would have had on them. Also, even though graphically it aged even worse than any other way, it was at the time considered to be a very pretty game. Now, the overworld characters, where you're running around in clouds all looking like he has bricks for hands and all that, that was never considered to be very good, but the graphics for the battle system was pretty good, and the CG scenes were obviously a big benefit to it. Then the pre-rendered backgrounds were considered to be quite pretty at the time. But it was all these different things that contributed to the impact the game had. And I'd say the biggest thing about it was it wasn't just something that drew people in at the beginning and then let them down at the end. Once we got to the end, and specifically that final battle with Sephiroth, with that song One Winged Angel playing, it was just sort of the perfect end to this entire thing, because it was such a strong finish. I mean, the game, I'd say it did have a couple of letdowns along the way. I remember the first time I was playing through it, I had a couple of points where I was sort of getting bored with it, and most of that was like the Great Glacier area. But for the most part, the game is really just maintains itself, at least the entire time. Obviously, the game has not aged particularly well. I'd say from a purely technical feat, as well as a technological feat, it was immediately surpassed by games that came out not long after that, like the game Xenogears came out about a year after this did. Didn't receive the same fanfare that Final Fantasy VII did, but I'd say it was probably the better game. And Final Fantasy VIII came out after that, a year after that in 1999, and both in the terms of technology-wise and as far as storytelling goes, it was probably a better thought-out system, more well-rounded, even if the characters weren't really as sort of memorable. That's a better term. But still, for what this was at the time that this was, back in a time when people didn't really, in the West anyway, didn't really think that highly of this genre, it was really a big thing. And in fact, this game wasn't just the beneficiary of being the but being the thing that introduced the RPGs to the Western audience. It was also the catalyst for it. I imagine people eventually would have gotten into the genre over here anyway, but it was really what caused it. The success of this game opened the floodgates for a lot of other games, not just from Squaresoft or anything like that, but for all the other companies that wanted to release these types of games to a Western audience. Not just American audience, but also European. Oh geez, I thought it almost froze up. That would have sucked. This was a game back when I started doing Let's Plays on this channel. I decided that I did not want to do, at least not initially. because, well, it was going to take a while for one thing, and it was a game that just about everyone else who does this kind of thing has already played. So I figured, what else could I really do differently than that they had done? And I couldn't really think of anything other than apply my style to it. But after about a year or two of me doing this, I decided finally go give Final Fantasy VII a try. And it really has sort of... I'd say this was actually more fun for me than it was for anybody else, because it had been so many years since I had played this game. Honestly, it had been... oh geez, what is it, 2013 now? I'd say I hadn't even touched the game since maybe 2007, or 6 maybe even, because I found the DVD, the jewel case of this game, stashed in a box that I had packed up before I had moved, and it was still in that box. So, that was a number of years ago. But playing through this game has sort of brought this series back into my mind, and even though this is one that was most recognizable to me, it sort of brought me back into the interest of this game series, and more than the way that the Final Fantasy X LP I did last year had done for me. So it's I'm probably going to do more of these Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VI is immediately on my list. In fact, I've actually begun producing episodes for that already, and you'll see that we start to post that series immediately after this. Anyway, that was Final Fantasy VII. Boom. Wow, 500 years later. Now, it's not only important to see that the character of Red 13 survived that long, but to show that Midgar, which was an amazingly damaging thing to the environment, all that Mako production had really screwed the planet up. And the laughter that we're hearing to show that humanity survived, and all the damage that the Shinra Corporation had done was eventually repaired. So, well, that's the end of my Let's Play series for the game Final Fantasy VII. As I sit here and watch the Starfield, I'd like to thank you for watching and listening to my series here. If you like what I have done here, feel free to check out a number of the other videos and Let's Play series I have on this channel. So, that's Final Fantasy VII. Thank you and goodbye.